I'm here to do my September wrap-up. I read 6 books in the month of September, which actually, compared to a lot of the other months in the year, isn't the highest number of books I read in a month, but I gave all of them either 4 or 5 stars, so quality-wise, it was great. 3 of those were rereads for me, so I didn't read a lot of new books, but I really enjoyed the books that I read. So I'm going to stop talking about that. I'm just going to jump into the wrap-up. So the first book I completed in September, forgot what month we were talking about for a second, was The Marvelous Land of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is the second book in the Oz series. There's like 15 books in this series. And since The Wizard of Oz is my favorite classic and really just one of my favorite stories of all time, I have made it kind of a lifetime mission of mine to read all of the Oz books. So I read the second one, and I enjoyed it. It was just as like weird and whimsical as The Wizard of Oz is, but we do follow some different characters. So in this book we follow a boy named Tip. So he's kind of our main character of this book, kind of like Dorothy is the main character of The Wizard of Oz. And he creates some friends along the way and meets some old friends along the way as well, because the Scarecrow and the Tin Man are also in the second book, which was great. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I liked it as much as the first book, because the first book has such a special place in my heart, but I definitely did enjoy it. I'm looking forward to reading more books set in this world, because I think I'm actually going to enjoy them all. I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel going further in, but I think at least for a little while I'm going to be enjoying the ride. One thing that was interesting about The Marvelous Land of Oz is there's kind of this sprinkle of like women empowerment, which I wasn't expecting, and that was refreshing in a way for such an old book, because you didn't see a ton of like feminist ideas in older literature. Now definitely there were some stereotypes sprinkled in here too. This was written a very long time ago, but I think that Baum was a little bit ahead of his time with that, and that was really kind of cool to see. So I'm curious now to read the third book, which is Ozma of Oz. Now that I've read the second one, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series eventually. So the next book I read in September was The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I say I read this in September. I finished it in September. I actually started it a while ago. I don't even remember what month it was. It was sometime over the summer. I started the physical thing, and then I started listening to the audiobook, and then didn't finish the audiobook before the audiobook had to go back. And I finally got it and finished it in the beginning of September. I mean, this is a very well-beloved, very well-known book. It's Anne Frank's diary. Anne Frank was a teenager who was hiding with her family during World War II because they were Jewish. Pretty much everybody in her family except her father died once they were caught. It's a pretty well-known thing. Review-wise, I don't feel like I can review a diary. Like, this is somebody's personal thoughts of things that really happened, and I can't really judge that. I don't think it's right for me to judge it. So instead, I'm going to talk about reading this physically versus listening to it. I did a little bit of both. I enjoyed both. I really did enjoy listening to the audiobook better, I think. It was narrated by Selma Blair, and she did a really good job with it. She kept me really engaged throughout. I really don't know how to review this book. I gave it 5 stars. I'm really glad that I finally read it. It's one that I've been wanting to read for very many years and somehow never read. I remember starting it at one point whenever I was younger, but I never finished it. It was just a book that I picked up in a classroom and never finished it. But I'm glad I finally read it, so that's all I really have to say about it. The next book I completed was Prince Caspian, which is either the 4th book chronologically or the 2nd book in publication order of the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. This one was a reread for me. I haven't read it since I was about 11 or 12, somewhere in there, whenever I read most of these books. I mean, I always enjoy being back in the Narnia world. It's definitely not my favorite. My favorite is still Blind, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think there were a few parts kind of sprinkled out where I was a little bored, but I really enjoyed being back in this world. I enjoyed the reread. I enjoyed getting to see Peter and Susan and Edmund and Lucy again, because they're like the heart and soul of the Narnia books, I feel like. That's all I really have to say. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Thoroughly enjoyed. Now we're gonna get into a little more intense stuff. So if you watched my September TBR, you know that my main priority for the month of September was to get through as many of the Throne of Glass books as I could, because I'm rereading them before Kingdom of Ash comes out. I had read The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, and Crown of Midnight already. I'd already reread those, and then I just kind of stopped my reread and then realized what month it was and was like, oh shit, I gotta get back on that. So I managed to complete 2 books, I guess I'll just talk about them together, which is Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows. This is the 3rd and 4th book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And so I managed to read both of these in their entirety this month, which is great. When I read the Throne of Glass series the first time, this was my least favorite. Not to say that it was bad and I didn't enjoy it. It was just my least favorite. I don't really know if I would still consider it my least favorite. I think I enjoyed the reread a lot more. This book, it's when they start getting super long. The first 2 books and the novella collection are not super long, and this is the first one that was, and this is also where we start to meet a lot of new characters. So when I read these books the first time, I'll admit there were times where I was a little bit bored in spots just because I didn't know these characters yet. I wasn't attached to them. I just wanted to get back to Selena and Dorian and Kale. But now that I've actually like read up through Empire of Storms, the first round, and I know the characters in this book, I actually enjoyed it a lot more. I ended up bumping my rating from like 4.5 to 5, and I'm really, really glad that I reread this book. Now let's talk about Queen of Shadows, because this is still so far my favorite Throne of Glass book. This is a wild ride, this one. I'm really glad that I reread this book, because once I got to where I had around like 250 pages left, I had read almost everything that I remembered about this book. So the last 200 pages, parts of it were like reading it for the first time. I remembered the way it ended and like major things that happened, but I'd forgotten a lot of the details wedged in between those major things. I think that making the decision to reread this whole series before the last book comes out is going to be super beneficial for me, because if I had just jumped into Kingdom of Ash, or even Tower of Dawn, because I haven't read Tower of Dawn yet, I would have been a little lost, to be completely honest. So this book has my heart, and I love it so much. And I'm going to stop blabbering about it now. I gave both Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously, I love them. They're great. And the last book I read in the month of September was another audiobook, and that was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. So this book has been all over the internet pretty much since it came out. Sometime at the beginning of the year, it was like February or March. It has been getting rave reviews, and I totally get why. It was great. So this book is about, it's a fantasy book, it's a YA fantasy. It has elements of African culture and mythology in it. I keep trying to sum up this book, but I don't know how much I actually want to give away, because I think it's more fun to go in kind of blind. So all I will say is that it's about a girl named Zaylee, and she and her brother and their new friend Amari have been tasked with bringing magic back to the kingdom because it has been gone for a while. And I'm going to leave it at that. It's really, really great. The writing is fantastic, so gripping. A lot of stuff happens in this book. I really enjoyed listening to the audiobook. I thought the narrator did a really good job with it. It kept me very engaged. Now, I will say there were a few times, just because this book is so big and so much happens, and sometimes I have this problem with listening to fantasy audiobooks where there's so much going on that I do miss details. So I think at some point before the second book comes out, I'm going to reread this in the physical format to refresh my mind. But I absolutely love this book. I totally understand why it's being hyped, because it's great. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait for the sequel. I think it comes out towards the beginning of the year next year, in the first few months, and I'm really excited about it. So if you have not read Children of Blood and Bone yet, and you like YA fantasy, or really just fantasy in general, this is like a must read. It was so good. And that's it for my September wrap up. Like I said, I didn't read a ton of books, but the ones I did read I loved. So overall, I would call it a really good reading month. So let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought. And I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye.